Sup everybody, my name is Kristen Mae Carbone. This is You, Me, and Brie Makes 3, and today, you guessed it, we're making cheese. So let's get started. So when I was deciding what I wanted to do for this week, I went into work one day and they had these on a shelf, free to a good home, which is why I brought them home. This is from Urban Cheese Craft. This is not a sponsor, but they're free to do so if they'd like. And this one in particular is for mozzarella and ricotta. I went online and I saw they had one for Chev. They also had vegan and paleo gluten-free kits as well. So if you want to make those types of cheeses at home, they have kits for you. So today we're going to make mozzarella from scratch. And this kit has everything.
Hello everybody. So as you can see, this is my mozzarella and ricotta kit. And in here we have a variety of things that we will need, including, and most importantly, instructions. So these are the ones for mozzarella. It obviously comes with the ones for ricotta as well. It comes with a cheese thermometer, which if you do not have a kitchen one is going to be very important. It also has cheese salt, which is a little bit more coarse than your typical table salt. There is also some citric acid, which if you remember from previous episodes is really important in the cheese making process. Next is cheesecloth, which is good if you're going to make ricotta. And then finally, and perhaps most importantly, is your vegetarian rennet tablets, which we will use later. Also, please make sure to read your instructions before you start, especially if there are things you need to do quickly back to back. You want to be able to just do them and not have to worry about scrambling to see what comes next in your instructions. So the first thing we need to do here is cut up our vegetarian rennet. It wants us to cut it into quarters. So I'm just having it here and then finding a piece and then cutting that in half. And if you have a pill cutter, this would have been so much easier and probably more precise. This was not something I was precise with. And then you're going to add water and let that the rennet tablet dissolve. So the next thing we're going to work with is the citric acid. Now, I mentioned this in the cheese making video. It is what is added to the milk to help it clump and start that process of getting the curds to separate from the whey. This was included in my kit. You can use lemon juice actually. I've seen some recipes call for that, but this was included in the kit, so I figured we might as well use it. And to the crystals, we're adding water, and we're going to just stir this until it is purely dissolved. And you'll see I stirred this for a very, very long time. But this is not when you want any errant crystals floating about. You want it nice and evenly mixed. So do that, like I am, and still going. Here we have nice quality whole milk. I got something organic. You want it to be just pasteurized or raw. Ultra high pasteurization will not work here. And we are adding the entire gallon. Yep, using up a whole gallon of milk. I think this was $10, but I wanted really quality cream for this mozzarella endeavor. And that's all goes in. From here, we are adding the citric acid water mixture to the milk. And we are giving it a very, very, very thorough stir just to make sure it's all equally incorporated, making sure we've gotten every last little drop because I didn't want to ruin something by not technically adding enough of anything. So now that that has been stirred, we are turning on the heat and we are heating this to 90 degrees and using that handy dandy cheese thermometer. I'm going to make sure I'm checking in several different spots to make sure that it is heating evenly and just giving it a gentle stir here and there. Again, just making sure everything's good. Here you can see me checking in multiple spots to make sure that it has come to the appropriate temperature. Because, depending on how you've set your pan on the heat, sometimes it's not even. And nobody wants that in their cheese. So now that that has come to temperature, we are adding in the rennet mixture and we are giving a quick 10 to 15 stirs just to make sure it's all fully incorporated. Being very diligent and counting my stirs. I think I actually did the full 15. And now that that is set, we are turning off the heat and taking it off the heat completely to set for approximately 10 minutes. And by approximately, I mean, no, I'm exactly setting a timer and making sure it is exactly for 10 minutes. This is me doing that because nobody wants to screw it up because you didn't keep an eye on your time. And I have no concept of time. So a timer is a necessity. And there it is.
So our 10 minutes are up, and now we check the curd. So, depending, according to my instructions, on what the curd is like, look for, let's say, clear coagulation, which there clearly is. I'm going to pull this forward so you can see. Clearly some coagulation. Clumps of white curd floating in this way, or a solid mass of custard or yogurt-like curd that can be cut. Okay, I see curd formation. It's kind of yogurty. Let's see if I can cut it. Oh, did you see that? I'm actually gonna let it set for another couple minutes because I want a little bit more curd formation. I just want it a little bit more solid. But we're pretty much ready.
So I did end up letting it sit for another 2 or 3 minutes just for a little bit more solidity in the curd. And if you remember from the cheese making video, when I talked about cutting, this is cutting the curd. One of the mistakes I think I made is not cutting deep enough, especially on the first couple cuts that I made. As you can see, I went a little bit further down in subsequent cuts. And I'm making a hatching motion because you want the curds to be about an inch or so wide. Now I'm cooking them gently, and I'm gently stirring them a bit just to give them a little bit of movement in the whey. We're cooking them in the hot whey as opposed to draining the whey first. And that's what that is. You can see the kind of yellowish whey and that bright white curd. A little jiggle there just to get some movement. Nothing too aggressive. So this is the part where I started getting nervous because the curds were a lot softer than I'm used to. As you can see, when I'm scooping them, they're kind of coming out less in solid cut curds and more like a curd cut blob. There's also still clearly a lot of whey in them, but I figured I'd separate them. And at this point, it kind of actually looks more like mozzarella than unfortunately it will at the end. But you can kind of see how that process will go to separate the curds and the whey.
So the next step in this instruction sheet has you doing a whey bath method where it's part hot whey and part cool water. That's not how I do it at the restaurant, but I figured I'll just follow the instructions here for this experience. So basically what you're doing is you're alternating the hot water from the leftover whey, which is on here, with the curds to gently soften them. We do a slightly quicker method where it's more just hot water and also a lot more salt than they advocate for in here. So my cheese is going to look a little bit different than yours might if you use a different cheese making method. But if you're using this package, I'm going to try following these instructions just to see what happens because there's very little that can go wrong at this point. It's pretty much already cheese. So let's see what happens.
Famous last words, Carbone. So this is your cheese salt. I am adding it to the side, so it's already prepared, measured out. That's a lot less than I typically use. They only had you using 1 to 2 teaspoons. I definitely put more than that myself. Here is the mozzarella as it stands, and the whey is coming up to temperature. The whey is coming up to temperature. I measured it in a couple different spots to make sure. This is when they want you to do this repeated whey bath method, which again is not how I do it. And also my curds are much firmer at this point. You can see they're kind of really, really soft already. So what they want you to do is add 2 cups of whey, 1 cup of water, let that sit for 2 minutes, drain most of the liquid out, do it again, let it sit for another 2 minutes, and then do a third whey addition and start to pull. As I'll explain at the very, very end, this is obviously not how your curd should look. And I do have a couple reasons, and I talk about them at the end as well, but it is obviously not stretching. It's obviously very firm, very tight protein structure, so they're not relaxed enough to stretch. And I just struggle with this for a minute or two, just trying and being super disappointed because everything was going really well up until that point. And then obviously it just does not want to go. And I'm like, no, maybe it'll soften. Nope. And the face of disappointment reigns. I was so mad. I was so mad. I didn't even know what to do at this point, so I kind of just gave up. I chucked the spoons. I take the whey, which by hand, so it was clearly also not hot enough with that whole whey cold water thing. And so maybe if it was hotter, it would have been better, but the curd was so dense, and I just took the little salt that they said, which also wasn't enough salt. With the amount of cream and fat in there, you definitely need more salt than this. So I strongly disagreed with that as well, but I just rolled with it. I kind of massaged it in and smooshed it, and almost like it was bread dough, but it was so firm. It was somewhere almost between a very, very dry ricotta and a mozzarella. So that's interesting, but yeah, it definitely was obviously not mozzarella in any stretch, but I kind of just dealt with it. Things happen. They don't always work. You live. You try again.
So as you can see, it's not mozzarella. It didn't stretch like mozzarella, and I have a couple ideas for why that might be. In particular, getting it from this pan to the bowl in order to reheat the whey to do the whey bath method that they described took way too long, and there was a point where both me and my camera person looked at it and went, oh, it kind of looks like mozzarella. And so it had softened by then, and so I think it waiting too long, it kind of re-cooked the curds a little bit too much, because they were just kind of sitting there and they'd already started forming together, and so this just took it way too far. So that's something to consider if you do use this recipe and instruction book instead of doing it yourself. And I definitely would request you to use another person. Definite suggestion. This took more than just me, and it definitely takes more than an hour. So something to think about. I do think they do have some great starter instructions, but if I were to do this again, I would not follow all of them. I would do it the way that I know. But it's nice that the kit has everything. So I still have some type of cheese. It still tastes, been nibbling on it, pretty delicious. But it's not quite mozzarella. And that's fine. I've made something else. This is still basically cheese. It's just a different kind of cheese. So next week, we're going to do something else. Maybe I'll show you what I do with this cheese. And I'll see you next week. Bye.